Statistically, here in the United Kingdom, there are an average of 700 homicides in a year. According to the UK government website, as of March 2020, there were 1.2 million violent crimes and a 10% increase in murder. At the same time, we've seen a stark rise in extremist views, particularly in young men. When I say extremism, I think it's important to note that it doesn't just apply to extreme Muslim views. As you'll find in this video, that actually is quite the opposite. In the past 5 years, we've seen some truly heinous crimes take place on British soil, fueled by hateful ideologies, political dogmas, and everything in between. When I decided to start covering crime and mystery here on DuskLight Radio, I had trouble picking which one to start with. So I chose something that not only hit close to home, but resonated with me on a personal level given the recent updates we've been provided and the traction it's getting on national media. Today's case is something that has grabbed the nation's attention and in the coming days will be reported on by numerous outlets for its depravity, extremism, racial undertones, and absolutely vile, gross incompetence by the police. Before I get started, I want to set some ground rules for the way I plan to cover this and potentially other crime videos. You can consider this a disclaimer if you like, and if this doesn't agree with you, well, I understand. I refuse to glorify what the killers did, use any monikers given to them, or spend any more time on them than is necessary and or relevant. While it's undeniable the pathology of these monsters is fascinating, I wish to avoid it unless there's a slew of information that requires discussion. There are an abundance of documentaries that put too little focus on the victims and too much on their usually still alive male murderer. I want to toe the line as best I can, help scratch the true crime itch while reminding you of the most important thing of all. Something that I will reiterate at the beginning and end of every crime video here. These victims were people. They had names, lives, aspirations, and loved ones. We will not forget their names or the lives that were stolen. We will not simply refer to them as murder victims. We are DuskLight, and this is the tragic murder of Bibaa Henry and Nicole Smallman. Bibaa Henry was the older of the two siblings. Born in 1974 to former ABA featherweight champion Herman Henry, who would go on to found his own manufacturing company, and Mina Henry, a woman with an undeniable drive to succeed and provide for her family. Mina gave up office work to train as a teacher during Bibaa's adolescence, before eventually training for the priesthood and becoming the UK's first black female archdeacon. She was born into a family of love, ingenuity, and motivation, so it's no surprise Bibaa would go on to do the same, and was described by family and friends as having the heart of a lion, even in spite of her short stature, standing only at 5 feet. Bibaa's greatest passion beyond her family and her children was that of the most vulnerable in society. She made it clear early on in life that she wished to go into the welfare sector. Her early career spent helping drive disabled children to and from their activities. She even brought her infant daughter along with her, encouraging songs and the trip and a friendly environment. She would ultimately go on to become a senior social worker for the Buckinghamshire Council. From what her family and colleagues say, she was a force of nature and an exceptional senior worker with the biggest personality in the room. By all accounts, she was in the job she was meant to do and helped thousands of people's lives, bettering them every time she interacted with those inside and outside of her job. I think my favourite quote about Bibaa when researching this was that she had a smile which would put the Blackpool Illuminations to shame, which in this country is about as wonderful a compliment as you can get. Her sister, Nicole Smallman, was nearly 2 decades younger, but their passions for the arts were shared regardless, and the two were close over it. Nicole was a University of Westminster graduate with a focus on photography, the more laid back, affable and easy to talk to. Where Bibaa commanded a room when she walked in with an exuberant and lovable personality, Nicole was happy to mingle and relax. There were two halves of the same whole. Speaking to the BBC, longtime friend Ewan Ledger put it best when saying, "You hear about people lighting up a room when they walk in, but that description is almost too harsh for Nikki. When she walked into a room, she was like a nightlight. It was subtle, protective, warm." Nicole was passionate about her art and she excelled in it. She worked tirelessly on documentaries and theatre productions, while also furthering her career in acting and singing at the encouragement of her teachers, who told her she'd be perfect for radio or TV presenting. Her parents, Mina and father Christopher, would often joke that Nicole was a perfect embodiment of a child from the 60s, who was beautiful inside and out. At just 27 years old, she had barely begun her journey to realize her aspirations, the ability to follow in both her big sister and her mother's footsteps as two strong, powerful black women in her life. It was Biba's birthday. She was celebrating turning 46 and naturally wanted friends to safely celebrate with her. But key among them was her baby sister Nicole, Nicole's boyfriend Adam Stone, and Biba's close friend of 30 years Nina Esmat to come with her for a picnic. London during the summer can be beautiful if you know where to go, and for two locals of Blackheath, London, that wasn't a difficult decision. Friant Country Park in Wembley, northwest London. Nina recalls that night perfectly a year on. It was a beautiful evening, amazing view, amazing sunset. We were all taking pictures remarking on the sky at night. One of the sad things, for me at least, is the circumstances of their gathering. Due to the ongoing pandemic and the fact that in June 2020, it was still in its infancy with vaccinations just a pipe dream, the group were only there due to the requirement of social distancing. I don't deal in should've, would've or could've's, but it is very sad when considering what may have been without the pandemic. Fairy lights littered the canvas, drinks were served, photos were taken, and a good time was had. It was the kind of summer picnic we all think of during these heavy lockdown periods, and one that sticks with me just as powerfully as the events that followed it. A gathering and celebration of life, before it was unjustly and cruelly snuffed out. The rest of their friends, including Adam and Nina, eventually went home around midnight, while the sisters stayed and continued to party, even taking some more photos. It was the following morning and Adam was concerned. He couldn't reach Nicole and her flatmate had said she had never returned home that night. He asked around, checked her bank account to see if it had been used, and it hadn't, and couldn't track her on the Find My iPhone function. Panic hit its apex when he couldn't get an answer at Biba's front door either. At the same time, Nina was beginning to suspect something awful had happened to the two of them. It was on Sunday, June 7th, where both Adam and Nina went separately to the park they'd had the picnic at on Friday evening, that Nina found something which would chill her to the bone and give her suspicions more weight. In the grass near their picnic spot were Biba's prescription sunglasses, something she never went anywhere without. I saw them glinting in the sun and my heart sank. I just knew she would not have left them behind. While Nina went to the police, Adam and his parents stayed behind to search more, finding Nicole's sunglasses shortly after. Nicole and Biba's mother, Mina, was also concerned and had repeatedly tried to speak to the police over those 2 days, being brushed off every time. I said to the police, "We don't know if there's been foul play here, we have no idea. We are now 36 hours on and they haven't turned up." I knew instantly why they didn't care. They didn't care because they looked at my daughter's address and they thought they knew who she was. A black woman who lives on a council estate. First, Adam's father found the knife, discarded in the grass. Then, Adam came across the shoes, partially obscured in the undergrowth. Adam's words to their mother Mina erased any hopes of this ending with a simple misunderstanding or a bad birthday weekend gone awry. Instead, something beyond her worst fears would come to light. Bibaa and Nicole had been found behind a line of trees not far from their picnic spot. They had been stabbed brutally and repeatedly. Their eyes were open, and they were intertwined with another as if placed in a specific manner. It would come to light later that Bibaa had been stabbed 8 times, and Nicole 28. There was no logic to their killing on first glance by detectives. They saw no specific reasoning beyond directionless hatred. They were in the perpetrator's way, and that was that. It would be a year before we'd find out what the intentions of the killer were, though they left more questions than answers. A large quantity of male DNA was found at the scene which didn't belong to Nicole or Bibaa. Just under a month later, on June 30th, A familial DNA link was found on the police database, and on July 1st, they would break into a home in the quiet cul-de-sac in Blackheath. What they found was occult symbols, iconography to Satan, and an 18-year-old who had previously been part of the counter-extremist program Prevent. He had deep lacerations to his hands, was evasive and uncooperative. They had found their killer. Danyal Hussein had just turned 18 when he walked into a shop to buy a balaclava, a lottery ticket, and a knife. He'd written a pact to Lucifuge Rofakale, the demonic treasurer of the underworld, with specific terms. For Danyal, perform a specific amount of 6 sacrifices every 6 months for as long as free and physically able. Sacrifice only women, and build a temple for Lucifuge. In return, Hussein wanted riches, specifically to win the Mega Millions Super Jackpot lottery and to never be suspected by the police or court for what he did. At the bottom, he signed his name in blood. After committing the murders, he went back to his home and spent £162 in lottery tickets, undoubtedly expecting to get his riches. To the surprise of absolutely no one, not a single ticket netted the jackpot. This was in fact the second pact he'd made, the first being with the demon queen Byleth, wanting a love potion to make a girl at school fall in love with him. While most media outlets will fixate upon the Satanism aspect because of how prominent it is in evidence, and it's easy to find irony in this, the detachment Hussein has from reality is what is most chilling. Especially when considering he'd been flagged by the UK's counter-terrorism system when he was 15 by his school due to far-right extremist material on his computer. He was discharged in 2018, but it seems the rhetoric never went away, only growing stronger. Furthermore, his own father, Kamal Hussein, had expressed concerns about his son wandering off, going down the wrong path, and had gotten into the wrong crowd, but never elaborating further. When police seized his laptop and computer, they found he'd extensively searched Satanist ideologies, black magic, potion usage, and the far right. Most interestingly, he described himself as proudly Aryan. Anyone who has spent time in discourse and social networks will be familiar with the varying degrees of alt-right sentiments and the ways in which they're presented, but all of them have a single, unifying component: a hatred of women masked behind dark humor memes to such an obscure degree that it's impossible to tell where the joke ends and the hatred begins. By his own admission, Hussein had spent years on the dark web amongst others who shared and fostered his opinions, and any echo chamber that encourages that line of thinking will eventually reach a boiling point. In Danyal's case, this was it. Detective Chief Inspector Simon Harding, heading up the investigation, fully believes that had Nicole and Bibaa not fought back in the heroic manner they'd done and caused Danyal such injuries, he'd have killed more, perhaps even on that night, if we're to go by his contract. When speaking to the BBC, he said, "The level of violence and savagery that Danyal Hussein showed in that morning, in the pitch black, really doesn't bear thinking about. It brings shivers down your spine." Most importantly, it was that cut and the DNA it left at the scene which led investigators directly to Danyal Hussein and his eventual arrest. But it was just one of many hurdles and heartaches that the family would have to go through to see justice. One of the most egregious things anyone can do is disrespect the dead. I've personally seen videos of people posting selfies of themselves smiling or dancing at their elderly loved ones' bedsides or at open casket funerals, not thinking for 1 second about the ramifications, completely detached from the world around them. But to take it a step further is to be a police officer photographing the victims at the scene of their gruesome killing and sharing it in a private WhatsApp group, which is exactly what PC Denise Jaffa and PC Jamie Lewis decided to do. This was the final straw in a series of misgivings and misconduct by the Metropolitan Police Force, who admitted they had mishandled the grievances and worries of Bibaa and Nicole's family leading up to their eventual discovery. In a world far more aware of the systemic racism involved with police force and powerful establishments against black people, particularly black women and black trans folk, it is to the surprise of very few that there was no real sense of urgency when first looking at their disappearances. As their mother Mina put it, she was a black woman in a council estate, and therefore not a priority. To be already suffering with the pain of losing your mother, partner, sister, daughter, and not know who killed them, Then to have the same people who are supposed to protect you and your community photographing your loved ones in an unprofessional manner to share in a private WhatsApp group for amusement? Well, it's understandable why an independent inquiry has been held, and why both PC Jaffa and Lewis have been charged with misconduct in public office, and have, mercifully, entered a guilty plea. Whether those with privilege like to hear it or not, there is a reason we look at the police system and the overwhelming white male majority with a degree of distrust. In studies published by gov.uk, it was found that black citizens are up to 43 times more likely to be stopped and searched, only 1.8% of the police force is black, disproportionate force is used far more on black suspects than white suspects, and more black detainees die in police custody than white. Adding on to that, violence against women on a global scale is experienced by almost 1 in 3. That's 798 million, with at least one story to tell of a man hurting them, or in this case, worse. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, the respect and sanctity of life comes into that conversation, and it's impossible not to look at 2 white police officers photographing 2 brutally murdered black women for their own amusement as a disrespect of that ideology, and furthering the divide that we already see. Just like when Hussein indiscriminately targeted them for their gender, and cared nothing for their well-being or lives, these officers displayed a shocking lack of empathy that serves to deepen the distrust in the force. Coupling this with the racial and misogynistic angle of Hussein's killings, declaring himself a proud Aryan and pledging to only kill women in his contract, it's impossible to untie one from the other. To me and to many people, this is the angle to focus on when discussing Danyal Hussein. Not the lottery ticket packed with Satan's treasurer, though that may be the more fantastical option and one I'm sure many outlets will continue to run with. No. It's the young man living in a tumultuous home of division between his parents, who had spent all his teenage life under watch for alt-right extreme views about women and black people, who was let go, and ultimately followed through with the first stage of his plans, and took away 2 beloved black women in the process. Danyal Hussein's trial commenced earlier this month. Continuing his uncooperative behaviour, he pleaded not guilty and said he will not give evidence, ensuring the family would need to go through the agonising hardship of that day 1 year on. On July 7th, 2021, after 8 hours of deliberation, jurors brought back a verdict of guilty for 2 counts of murder and possession of a knife. In one final, disgusting act of selfishness, Danyal crossed his arms and shook his head in disbelief as the mandatory life sentence was issued, Nicole and Bibaa's loved ones sobbing in the gallery. They had endured a month-long trial to get to this point, and a series of painful and avoidable mishaps along the way. It was justice, long overdue. In a victim impact statement read to the court, the sister's mother, Mina Smallman, said, "No one expects their children to die before them, but to have 2 of your 3 children murdered overnight is just incomprehensible." She added, "If any good comes out of this, at least another 4 women will not meet a similar end in a so-called pact with a so-called demon. This is an unbelievable day for us, but it's the first, and there are 2 more battles to go. But today we remember our girls as the wonderful, strong women they were." There is a lot to unpack from this case, and more that I have barely scratched the surface on. But instead of diving into further discourse, I wish to leave you with these photos of Bibaa and Nicole's last hours. The beauty in celebrating life, the exuberance for the future, and the final photo that was ever taken of them. In it, you can see the momentary distraction as Nicole looks off to the left at someone approaching, Bibaa completely unaware. These are the moments before Hussein attacked, and it is one of the most chilling things I have ever seen. I choose this because while justice has been served, it will never bring back Bibaa Henry or Nicole Smallman. Bibaa's daughter no longer has her mother. Adam no longer has his partner. Henry, Mina, and Christopher do not have their daughters. And the world is worse off for it. Please consider that when discussing the subject matter down below. Don't remember the satanic pact. Don't remember the lottery ticket, and don't remember the name of the killer. Remember Bibaa Henry. Remember Nicole Smallman. Remember what was taken. Thank you for watching, and I hope you not only found this interesting, but that I did a good job covering it. This is my first foray into true crime, and I wanted to take a lot of time, care, and attention to the story. Links to the relevant articles and statistics can be found below for those interested. If you know someone who may be involved in right-wing extremist activity, consider talking to them and try to understand why they found their way to that ideology. The only way we can bring people back to normalcy sometimes is through patience and understanding. Act Early is a UK organisation to help those struggling with far-right extremist views, and resources are available below. Please also consider looking at the London Black Women's Project, which focuses on Black, Asian and visible minority ethnic women who have experienced violence and domestic abuse. I'd also like to promote IMCAN, which is an umbrella UK-based women's organisation dedicated to addressing violence against Black and minoritized women and girls. You can find out more linked below. Special thanks to Romnex for editing this video. She is one of my best friends in this YouTube community alongside the Dark Somnium, two great channels you should absolutely check out. Please be sure to take a break if you are overwhelmed by the subject matter. Don't forget to stay hydrated and focus on other positive topics too. Someone out there cares about you very much. If you'd like more true crime with a focus on the lesser known, please let me know in the comments. DuskLight Radio is a multimedia platform that does immersive audio drama adaptations, historical horror, true crime and mysteries. I want to provide a little something for everyone on the deep dive section of YouTube, so please consider subscribing and hitting the bell if you liked it. I'll see you all again soon. We are DuskLight, and we will find our way through the darkness together.